A guy by the name of Scott Jones was a guy who helped Lawrence Rockefeller brief the science advisor for Bill Clinton. He worked for Claiborne Pell, who was the head of Foreign Relations Committee in the U.S., top Democrat guy. He told me the story that he went on behalf of Claiborne Pell to talk to the Chinese, and he also talked to the Russians. He told me the story that he was talking to the highest level of Chinese officials, and he said to them, why don't you do something? Why the Americans aren't doing anything? Why don't you make the disclosure? And what he said, high-level Chinese officials said, when the Americans disclose, we'll be a close second, which seemed to indicate that somehow the Americans are expected to go first.
Okay, let me work in a couple of quick...
And there's something really important that Scott Jones and I, in an interview about this, I asked him, I said, if the Chinese were saying they are waiting for the United States to act, is the implication that when Nixon went to China in that revolutionary trip, that the real reason was to do some sort of classified agreement between China and the United States on the UFO ET issue?
I just want to add, though, again, the Scott Jones encounter, that's 25 years ago. Nixon is almost 50 years ago. A lot of water's gone under the bridge since then, and China's not the same country it was, so I don't really know if we can really expect that China will just wait for the United States at this point. I don't know. It's a very different situation.
All right.
There's just one more thing. Okay. What if Xi in China or Putin in the Soviet Union, Russia, decided tomorrow that they are going to pull the rug out from under the United States and the Western world, and they have the press conference of all centuries, and they show the bodies and they show the craft? The world would change like that. And the question is, why doesn't Xi, why doesn't Putin do it?
Just last quick question, because it's a matter of bluffing. Everybody's holding their cards. Everybody wants somebody else to put their cards down first, because then you're going to give them the answers that they need. It's militarizing the whole thing. The Chinese are militarizing it, the Russians and the Americans are militarizing it, and they're not going to put their cards on the table.
You could give me all the Xi in China.
It's just very disruptive. It's just very, very disruptive. China and Russia are working through major infrastructure development together right now. I think any real disclosure of this reality, it's going to be a 5-minute walk to the next question, which is, oh, so if you know this is real, then do you know anything about the power source of these objects? Someone knows. Someone's got to know. And whatever they're using, it's got to be a little bit more than high-octane gasoline to go from here to there. And so I have said for years, implicit in any kind of genuine UFO disclosure is going to be, whether tomorrow or next year or in 10 years, a post-petroleum society in some way or another. Because people are going to realize, oh, there's something, whatever that answer is, whether it's nuclear fusion or 0 point or I don't know. But so I think that the Chinese and Russians, just like the Americans and the Canadian leadership, I think they're fundamentally conservative people. Certainly the Chinese and Russian governments are fundamentally conservative, which means they're not going to take revolutionary steps to upset the global balance, unless they're pushed to the wall. Right now you've got a covert war really going on, not so covert, between the US, the West, and those two nations. And so I could conceivably imagine some chess move on the board being a disclosure, maybe, but I don't know.
All right, a quick question. Again, just straight to the question.
It seems to me that the phenomenon is complicit in this secrecy. What are some of your theories on why the aliens aren't just telling us what's going on?
Well, I'll just jump in here for a moment. I think it's because Earth has had genetic manipulation for thousands, millions of years, and that one of the objectives of at least one or two of the three that are the main types, the blondes, the reptilians, and a menagerie of grays, is they don't want what they are manipulating to know what the other intelligence is up to. So secrecy has always been one of the demands, apparently, of at least one or two of the groups terraforming and manipulating genes on this planet. And then that goes to the question, what are we to them? And if they have been manipulating DNA and creating hybrids over a period of time that keep replacing with new models, and Cro-Magnon, Homo sapien sapien replaced Neanderthalensis, is something in the process of replacing Homo sapien sapien, and to what end? And if a current statement made to me a couple of weeks ago by somebody was, the current estimate inside of the DIA is that 30% of the 7.2 billion people on planet Earth now are hybrids. You can say that might be positive, or it might be negative, or it might be neutral, but what this does is raise the issue of how big a box are we in, and that the players themselves may be the only ones who totally understand where all of this is headed, and that hybridization is an important part of what they do, and they don't want us to know, but we're learning.
But the basic problem here is we will spend $1 trillion this year. We Earthlings, I'm presuming you're all Earthlings, I can't prove that, but we will spend $1 trillion on things military. Not on feeding the starving, but on things military. And what are we doing to put forth a correction to this system that has us worrying about the benefit to the people on this planet? And because I think that there are rules in the local galactic neighborhood about interfering with others. I think the aliens know we're acting like idiots, but there are rules that they can't step in and say, okay, enough guys, we've had it, here's what you got to do. So how to make that transition, that's something we're not doing enough about. And maybe we need the Pope and the Chief Rabbi of Israel, there's a combination, huh? To work on where do we go from here to stop acting like 3-year-olds.
Of course, yeah. We're still children, of course. I mean, in answer to your question about the secrecy, I think that once again we're looking at the whole issue much like the Catholic Church looked at the Earth being the center of the cosmos way back when, and Galileo said, no, you got it all wrong. The one thing I believe we're not really focusing on is the galactic nature of what's going on. We are not the only planet in this cosmos that's having the problems that we're having. You have to figure with the number of planets that Stanton is talking about, there have to be other botched up planets someplace in the cosmos. And now if we think that these extraterrestrials are running around fixing planets all over the cosmos, I'm not sure if that's happening or not. But if we think we're the only planet in our galaxy or in the cosmos that whoever these ETs are trying to come here and fiddle with this and fiddle with that to make us what they want us to be or a better race, I think we've got another thought coming. Because once we become a starfaring civilization, we reach out to the planets that are making the same mistakes as we are. Could we be in the same position as the ETs are in relation to us? Okay, so we've got a responsibility to not only understand we've got problems, but this is something that's galactical in proportions, and we're not the only ones experiencing this problem. All right, a quick question over here.
Well, I wanted to just follow up on that, if I may, very, very quickly, excuse me. As far as secrecy by them, I think that's actually really a profound question. It's important because I'll play a mental game with myself and pretend I go back 1,000 years, only 1,000 years into the human past. So I go back to medieval Europe. And I ask myself, how much, if we were to go back as we are, knowing what we know about the world, how much could we tell those people about the nature of our world without their heads just blowing up? Like, we would be able to tell them basically nothing. Or out come the torches and the pitchforks, and that's the end of us. So there's actually very little that we would be able to tell them without completely dissolving their society. And that's with their best intentions at stake. And I think about with another species that has clearly a different psychological disposition than we do. They don't think like us. They have emotions, but I'm sure they're different than we are. Absolutely, there's no question in my mind. I've had a long conversation with one abductee who very, very cogently said to me, that his strong experience was that when he was in the presence of these other beings, they had to slow down just to be able to, for him to understand anything about their thoughts. Everything's telepathic. And so I don't think they have it would be like if we were to go study gorillas in the wild and establish diplomatic relations with them. Like, we wouldn't think to do it because we wouldn't consider them on our level. And I suspect there's some of that going on. Now, the only thing that's changing is that we are revolutionizing ourselves right now. Like, this is not human society of the last 10,000 plus years, where in this quick of a blink of an eye, we've given ourselves science, technology, and nuclear weapons and computers and everything else, and just look at the next 20, 30 years. So that's the big transformation, and that will, I don't know how to predict that one, but we're not going to look the same in 30 years that we do now.
Can I make a short comment?
Yes.
I believe, the same as Stanton talks about this non-intervention idea, I think the idea that they're going to come in here to help us is our idea. It's a U.S. military idea that we're going to move into Iraq or Afghanistan and bring them freedom, democracy, Jesus, and McDonald's. They know that. They're beyond that. They know that you can't go in and do your kids' homework, that they will just destroy us if they come in here and give us a bunch of gifts and stuff. I mean, it just doesn't work that way. I think it's the rule of non-intervention.
All right, quick question here.
Thanks. President Trump has a huge and possibly fragile ego. I'm thinking we should ask the question framed for him, like, the president who releases this will go down in history forever and everyone will know their name forever. Will you be the president who can do it?
Can I quickly answer that? Because I followed the presidents. He was asked the question. It came from a reporter on the Hill when the New York Times story broke. The question was asked in the White House press room, what does President Trump think about UFOs, and is he going to refund the ATIP program? And Sarah Sanders, whose father was the governor of Arkansas, who said, I do not believe in UFO, I believe in GOD, said, well, we haven't really discussed that question. She confirmed later that she knew that question could be asked because of the story breaking in the New York Times. She said, we really haven't discussed that with the president. I'll talk with him and I'll get back to you. And I went to the reporter a number of times. She never did get back to him. I say it's plausible deniability. They don't want this thing to go to the president. They keep it away from the president. So the question was asked in the White House press room, and they have no intention of answering the question.
All right.
But the question is, why is he now urgently pushing a space force and making it sound as if he unilaterally, as King of the United States, can bring a space force into being by saying it will be there, and getting the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Dunford, to back him up and say, yes, we've got that. When the truth is, in the United States still, you cannot create another independent branch in the Department of Defense without congressional approval. And that could take 1 to 2 years.
That's right. Oh, thanks. Yeah, I think I'll just follow up on Linda, and I totally love what Grant just said about that. But the creation of a space force, I think, was an inevitability. At some point, there's going to be a unified command in Earth orbit. From a military point of view, I see no other solution. The Army and the Navy and the Air Force won't like it because they've got a presence in space, but it'll probably happen. And it'll take some time, but, and it's not a sure thing. It could just get shot down, could totally get shot down. But it'll probably, I would bet, I'd put money down that it'll go through within a few years.
Okay, quick question over here.
To me, full disclosure would be only if the interplanetary beings present themselves. And so I was just wondering, because when you say the government is lying to us or they're going to tell us the truth, shouldn't we be worried, and this is something I haven't heard, shouldn't we be worried a little bit that whoever controls that narrative for that information could just lie to us anyways, and as long as they can control it, they can actually have more propaganda out there to control us.
You,
Anyway, and
you
this-
can count on them lying.
and- well,
You
Absolutely.
can count on them lying,
But
but
the-
the thing is, right now, it's where we started this dialogue at the beginning. There are a whole bunch of us now who are on YouTube, We are becoming independent voices that a lot of the public are coming to see what we are saying and looking for reality checks on everything that is coming from the United States government now. Thank God. And people are becoming more sophisticated and realizing that the web is being used by counterintelligence to manipulate thought in every direction.
But the second part of that was, I was going to say is, if when you say Elon Musk or Russia or any other country that gets to the space or the moon or Mars to present information that that been hiding or whatnot, don't you think that behooves those countries to, you know, America to be the first to speak out before that? And then who are we to know? Then it just becomes the same old news, fake news, who's right, who's wrong, and that cycle just continues because no one's going to know actually the truth.
Yeah, I like what you say. There's definitely going to, you can't expect an honest anything from any government. Really, they're all self-serving, but it doesn't mean, so what disclosure will really do is it will open the door for an open public conversation, which we don't really even have. Even now, we're not there. We're inching toward it, but we're not there. So when there is an admission, and this is what I will define as disclosure, an admission that some of these UFOs are not from our civilization, that's what I would call disclosure. That opens the door. That's a revolutionary statement. And everyone's going to be trying to control that narrative for their purpose. It's not like the CIA is going to walk away from the table and say, oh, here's all our documents, just go read them all. Like, they're not going to do that. So they'll give up as little as they can and control as much as they're able to and try to minimize their legal liabilities, by the way, because the secrecy certainly has had a great number of illegalities. You can be sure of that. So everyone's afraid to follow the CYA rule, if you know what I mean. So that's a big part of it. And it's just going to be a wide open ballgame. Disclosure is not the end of anything. It's the beginning of the new phase of the fight for truth. And it's going to take a long time. And it'll be messy and very unpleasant because guarantee you, I'd bet a lot of money that the disclosure will not involve a gray alien at the podium next to any president of the United States like Donald Trump or anyone else. Like, there won't be gray alien there. So what it will be, it would include an acknowledgement that yes, it's real. And that opens up the doorway for every argument you can imagine. You've got evangelical Christians over here. You got New Age tree huggers over there. They're not going to have the same idea on what this phenomenon is. There's no bridge long enough to connect those two points of view. And then you'll have the hardcore skeptical debunking scientists over there, and they're going to be like, show me the proof, this is not good enough. It's just going to be a mess. So, but it will open the door.
Yeah.
And that's all you can say about it.
Yeah, I agree with, because I wrote an article called 64 Reasons. You're saying take the message and control the message, but they're worried about the opposite. The first person that speaks suddenly has to answer cattle mutilations, abductions, and every other horror story that people are bringing out. That's what they're afraid of, is that you lose control of the narrative if you suddenly speak out and acknowledge this. And as numerous people have said, politicians are gutless wonders. They're gonna, and they even told, it was with Stephen Greer, it was Fox, when they went on the Hill, they said, we back you, but we're supporting you, but you've got to back us. You've got to provide some backing for us to come out. You get the parade going, and then we'll lead the parade. They're just, I think, deathly afraid of all the things that can go wrong, that it looks very simple. You
Everything
stand up.
will go wrong. Every single thing. There's nothing, there's no upside. This is why I never believed that Podesta and Hillary would ever do it, because they're smart enough to know this is an impossible situation. How do you just give up a little bit of the secret and think you're going to control the narrative? That's a really big gamble. Like, you're not going to control this narrative. It's too big. There are some people who have what's called a dog-like obedience to authority, and they'll just believe anything that the government says to them, fine. But there's a lot of other people, they're not just going to roll over and say, oh, great, you kept the secret for so long. They're going to want answers, and it's not going to be a fun time.
But let me defend Hillary. Let me defend Hillary and Podesta. They did it. They actually controlled the narrative. They said on December 16th, there is a phenomena. We are studying the phenomena. We spent money on it. It's for real. And they got away with it. Nobody jumped off any buildings. Nobody killed themselves.
That's not Podesta and Hillary. That's not.
But Podesta was part of the To the Stars thing. They did the 6-hour interview with him. And you could see through that whole thing that he was, as was pointed out by Lavenda on your show, is he said that if Hillary had won, they had this, 5-hour interview with Podesta that would have gone public, and they would have been on the spot. It was not like they could suddenly say, oh, no, we never talked about disclosure, you never heard it. They were on the record as saying, we are going to do this.
I have a question. MUFON puts out conference proceedings, standard practice. You got to supply a paper. I've done this a number of times. I think you all have too. The question, does anybody know what Elizondo, who is giving a talk at MUFON, the featured speaker, whether he has submitted a paper yet?
Yes, he has. Yes.
Have you read it?
Not yet, no.
Oh, damn. I thought we'd get an advance tip, but you see what I'm getting at? If there is a paper there, we may have the proof positive going on. Big opportunity.
But they're still controlling the narrative, because he didn't appear at UFO Congress, and we were told that he didn't appear because he was going to get asked hardball questions and nobody would believe him even if he did it. And so what happened was that they said to him, well, we'll ask you the questions, we'll do the interview. And they said, well, no, you send us the questions, we'll do the interviews. And John Greenwald, who you know, started February the 1st, and there's this controversy about whether it's aerospace or aviation. February the 1st, John Greenwald started to contact Tom DeLonge's public affairs people and said, I want to talk to Elizondo. I will talk to him by Skype. I will talk to him by phone. I will talk to him. I will fly there if I have to. Just basically to ask the one question and a couple other questions, what's the name of the program? Because he was told by the Pentagon it was aviation, and Elizondo is using aerospace. And so from February the 1st till May the 21st, they said, oh, we're working on it, we're going to get this thing. And on May 21st, they said there will be no interview.
Okay,
so
I'd like to
they're
work in
protecting, they're spinning the story.
Another question here, please.
Please. I just want to say one more thing here.
And
I've got to finish this thing with Grant. So if Hillary and Podesta were going to do this, and this is what Peter Levenda did. I did an interview with Peter Levenda, who co-authored a book with Tom DeLonge, and it's on my YouTube channel. And it's true, Levenda did say this. But I'm going to just say, I cannot conceive how they feel that they're going to be able to control this narrative unless they're so confident that they have, well, they do have the New York Times in their pocket. They clearly do. They've got the corporate media in their pocket. So if they feel that they're going to do a disclosure and the corporate power media is going to support them sufficiently so that they're going to avoid all the bumps and of a revolution, because this is a revolutionary statement, a revolutionary development, then I think they're still fools for thinking that they're going to be able to ride this tiger. It's going to be impossible.
But I still say it comes down to the definition of disclosure. Your definition of disclosure is to say, yeah, ETs are here, this is for real, we've known about this all along. That's not their idea of disclosure. Their idea of disclosure is what they're doing right now, the drip, drip, drip. And I've heard 2024 that they're going to drag this thing out just bit by bit, and they have controlled it so far as I can see.
Yeah, it's very, well, this is true. It's slow control over the narrative, and I would call that a form of controlled disclosure. And it's really, I don't know, maybe that's the only way to do it. I don't really know. I don't have every answer either, but it's definitely, there's control by these very few people at the top of our hierarchy, and they're going to make sure that they have minimized their risk. But I just think it's a major gamble.
We have 5 minutes, so I'd like to work in a couple questions.
Hi, Linda. I heard your interview with the pilot in Antarctica, and I just wanted to get the opinion on all of you on what do you think is really going on down there?
I am doing a lot of work on that, and I hope that I'm going to be able to do public reporting in a few months with the kind of evidentiary material I am trying to gather. But I can give you at least this outline that I started hearing for the first time. Totally, I'm not working with Corey Good or David Wilcock. But in their cosmic disclosure on Gaia, they had started painting a picture 2.5 years ago that it is interesting to me that the first whistleblower that contacted me was and was willing to give me DD-214 and military records, and came from a Marine background and got out of the Marines and was immediately contracted into special ops. And to summarize his story, and then at least 2 more independent whistleblowers who have different facets of what I'm going to say. He said that he's been, the Marine, who's now in Special Ops, he said that he has, for the last 15 years, been involved in operations going to Antarctica. The entrance point is by submarine, and that they have been sanitizing, that's his word, sanitizing the Antarctic ancient archaeology 2 miles down under ice in order at some point to show it to the world, but that they've been taking out artifacts that may or may not fall into the category of Buzz Aldrin's own tweet last summer when he was medevaced out of McMurdo, and a tweet went out from Buzz Aldrin, "I have seen the face of evil." What is it that is in Antarctica where a lot of people with names have been going down there, and it's been being reported the last couple of years, and that the Marine says that there are huge scaled archaeology under the ice, and that the issue of how long has it been there is related to when was the last time that this part, it's probably Wilkes Land if you look on a map, had no ice. And when you ask geophysicists, you will get somewhere a range of 13 million to 33 million years ago. Well, Homo erectus in Africa, the first standing up primates, is only 2 million years old. So whatever it is that is under 2 miles of ice in Antarctica could be between 13 and 33 million years. And he said in the process of the 15 years of sanitizing that they have seen hieroglyphs and symbols and patterns that match photographs that they have been shown from the backside of our moon, the interior of our moon, and the northern hemisphere of Mars in Cydonia. And that the hieroglyphs and the symbols match in all three. And that implies that a civilization, not human, was terraforming in the solar system, and that the 13 million to 33 million years could be when the moon and Mars and the Earth were being inhabited and terraformed. Now, we all need proof. But the closest proof I have is the fact that 3 people who do not know each other, who have come to me independently, they are pretty much describing the same kind of information. And they all say the same thing. Why would humanity be denied knowledge about archaeology in our solar system and on our planet that could be between 13 million and 33 million years old?
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are out of time. That's going to wrap our roundtable discussion on UFO disclosure. I want to thank Stanton Friedman, Richard Dolan, Linda Moulton Howe, Grant Cameron, Victor Viggiani, all of you for your great questions.